Matthew, it's a pleasure to join you today. My name is Robert Boyd. I'm the president and CEO of Endurance Gold Corporation. And Endurance Gold is an early stage venture capitalized junior mining company exploring for gold primarily in Canada and the US. Our prime project is a project that we've got outside of Vancouver, which we're active on at the present time.
Fantastic.
The company.
So, well, let Robert, I'll kind of jump in there. Thanks
Sure.
for the introduction. It's the first time we've met or spoken, so I'm kind of keen to get to know you. Interesting stories, some nice headlines that we've been looking at as well. So, why don't we kind of kick off with you? I mean, what's your background story relevant to what you're doing now?
Well, I've been in the business for about 40 years. My strength is early stage exploration. That's what I've done for most of my career. I spent about 10 years with Homestake Mining Company running their Canadian gold exploration program, but I've also was the president and CEO of a diamond exploration company that made a diamond discovery in Quebec and that was sold, and that mine is now in operation. And been involved in other commodities as well, but my career is the business of mineral exploration for my whole life. I'm a geologist. Trained with an undergraduate degree with a business degree at one of these business mills.
Okay, so tell me about who's supporting you. Who's in the team? You know, because it's relatively small. What are you? So about 50 million market cap. What are you doing, Robert? I'm intrigued. You seem immune to market conditions. Your share price isn't doing what others are. What's happening?
Yes, we are market capitalized around $50 million, but it's partly because we've had a lot of success on our mineral exploration program that we're conducting now in southern BC.
Right.
So we've been getting very good drill intersections. In fact, we released some really good ones this morning, which included numbers like 3.89 grams over 30.5 meters, and another one in there at 18 grams over 6 grams over 18 meters. So really, really good hits. So we're delivering those kind of results pretty consistently. The company is tightly held.
Right.
There's three of us directors that own about 55% of the company. I own about 6%, and then two other directors own collectively about 50%. Two American directors.
But we've seen that. Sorry, I want to stick on this subject because it's kind of. I just looked at your share chart and went, what? Because even tightly held companies, the smallest amount of trading has seen them trade down in kind of big steps. So, why don't we talk about the business plan and the strategy? Because maybe that's the basis on which you're doing it, or maybe it's because you guys are you're in the market buying as well. I'm sort of really genuinely intrigued that, because the people in your position putting out big high-grade numbers in their headlines, and the market's just gone, I don't care, right? So I'm intrigued about what you were doing differently. So should we start with the business plan? What have you set out to actually do?
The business got started back in 2005. I was not the CEO at the time. I joined the company back in 2008 as a director, as a technical director. But unfortunately, in around 2010, 2011, the founding CEO passed away, and I stepped in as the operating company at a time when I was expecting I would be moving into sort of semi-retirement after some successes in my career. And I've been kind of running the company since that time, and it was established with the goal of generating projects and identifying good opportunities. And we funded ourselves through the tough times by identifying good assets and then selling them off. For instance, one of the projects we had was a large land position, the Rattlesnake Hills area, which combined and became part of GFG Resources. Another was an identification of a Whitwater's Rand type gold discovery in Ontario, which we had in our portfolio, and we stepped down to a minority JV interest, and then we ultimately sold that, and we're now a shareholder in a company that controls that project and is conducting bulk sample programs on this kind of situation, and that's right in Ontario. So we kind of generated projects, brought them to a certain stage, and then brought in partners or whatever. We've identified this project as an early stage when we picked into it and just grabbed it in late 2019, early 2020. But we had such encouragement on it, we decided that we're just going to continue and explore this and develop it ourselves, because it's the best value for shareholders with the kind of success and exploration potential we saw when we started drilling this project initially.
Okay, so the business started as a prospect generator or project generator model, and you're selling stuff to, well, Rattlesnake, I think most people have heard of with GFG Resources, and also Paleoplacer to Inventus Mining. So that's kind of funded things along the way. And so have you still got equity positions in both of those? Or have you sold down?
We have a small equity position in GFG. It's not significant.
Right.
Our exposure there is a royalty on some of the claims in that Rattlesnake district.
Right.
And then our ownership interest in the Pardo project, we vended it for shares in Inventus, and we still own a number of shares in Inventus. We're just under 10% shareholder in Inventus Mining, which is a company run out of Rob McEwen's shop. And interestingly enough, Rob McEwen participated in our financing as an investor in March of this year.
Right.
For the first time.
Okay. So that's the history. So have you still got other projects within the portfolio which you could vend out or have others farm into? Or was that model now stopped?
Well, we still have some other projects that we're not active on spending dollars on. A really good reduced intrusive type gold project in Alaska, where we've did have an initial drill intersection of about 147 meters at 0.4 grams.
That's Elephant Mountain. That's the Elephant Mountain project you're talking about there.
Mountain project,
right. Okay.
Yeah.
Right.
And then we've got a rare earth niobium project in the southeastern Yukon that's been somewhat idle for a while, and there is a certain contingent of our shareholders are anxious for us to do something like that. So we're looking at our strategic options with respect to that project, but it's an early stage project that's pre-drill stage, and it's still at that discovery stage. So
right, but it's got the big buzzword rare earths, which is kind of hot at the moment. So I can see why people are a bit excited. But it's going to need what type of partner to come in? When you say you're keeping your options open, you're talking to people. What's that actually mean?
One of the things we felt to do was just to advance it to the stage of at least getting some permits. So we've got a Class 1 permit, which allows us to do early stage type exploration on it, and we're considering moving forward on a Class 3, which gives us the potential to drill on the project. So in the meantime, the type of work we might do is earlier stage type geophysics and some sampling and things like that, just to add an additional value to it. But the goal there would be to identify a partner that brings strategic advantages to the project. Either spin it out as a separate entity, bring in a joint venture partner with an ultimate spin out at some point, or sell it for shares to an entity that's in the business of developing a rare earth project that is looking for a feedstock.
Right. Okay. And I we've had some questions kind of sent in. It kind of shows perhaps there's a range of understanding about the rare earth sector, China and ex-China. So I guess at the point where you're ready to talk about, how you move that forward. I think there's a kind of an audience waiting and listening to see what you can do with that one. Because you're right, it needs to be a specialist who've got the ability to actually unlock value and not just go through a kind of drilling process. At the end, there's got to be an end result. We have a rare earth weekly show on our platform where we sort of talk about how you get these things going. It's truly fascinating. So, and what other projects have you got in the portfolio which might be vended out?
Those are the two.
Those are the two main ones.
Okay. Yeah, those are the two other ones. So we still retain a minor interest, about a 18% JV interest in a project in Northern Ontario that we call the Flint Lake JV. That's somewhat inactive now. It was vended off by the prime owner, their share, and not a lot's going on that project. And then we have another small ownership interest in a small project in Alaska called the Accord project. So
right. Okay.
Those are the only ones, aside from the royalties which we retain in Rattlesnake Hills and one other Northern Ontario project where we retain a royalty.
Okay, so let's say I guess just in terms of answering the question, you're clear about what you're going to do with those two with Reliance. Can you talk through where you're at? You obviously raised some money recently, which is great. But how do you allocate that? What do you do, especially in a market like this? Your share price is, like I say, extraordinary in the context of most companies that come on this show. You seem to be managing it quite well, maybe because it's tightly held, or maybe for other reasons. But what are you doing with the money that you raised recently? How are you allocating that?
Our prime focus and our exploration and activity focus is entirely the Reliance project at the present time. So the funds we raised in March was about $3 million. As I mentioned, there was participation by Rob in that financing, but myself and the other insiders picked up a small portions of that as well. And but it was picked up. It was a 40-cent financing with a 50-cent warrant, I think is the numbers on that one. And so that money, together with our other working capital shares and everything, puts us at the end of the first quarter with about $5.6 million in working capital.
Yeah.
And we're basically dedicating that and have committed that primarily to an exploration program on the Reliance project, which is continuing as we speak. We've just finished a phase of RC drilling on that, where we're testing the shallower oxidized targets with a dry RC technique. And then we transitioned in late April into a diamond drilling program, but not late April, but late May, into a diamond drilling program that is active right now, where we've got about 5 holes completed so far, and we're testing the same zone now, but now with deeper penetrations with the diamond drill, where the RC was testing the shallower penetrations.
And so shallow being what, how deep?
We've got a zone now. We've got gold over about 1.5 kilometers of strike in bedrock and drill holes. But there's one key zone that we've had a lot of success on, and the RC drill was primarily dedicated to that zone. And that's where we're transitioning with the diamond drill at the present time. And that's the Eagle area zone. And that we've traced gold now in shallow intersections, typically less than, most of the intersections we've got on that zone are less than 30 meters below surface, some of them down to 10 meters below surface, including channel samples on surface. So everything, most of the drill intersections, whether they're diamond drilling or RC, are typically less than 50 meters below surface on that trend so far. So we're just literally scratching the surface at this point, understanding the limits of the system. And we've now tracked it out for about 400 meters. And the last holes we just reported this morning on our RC drilling indicate the system's open to the southeast. So now we transition to closing that system up off to the southeast, and with the diamond drill chasing it at depth with the diamond drill to chase the system at depth. And it's a very encouraging looking orogenic gold system at a high level, or epizonal type orogenic gold system. And we're in a camp just 10 kilometers away from the Bralorne Pioneer Mine, which has produced over 4 million ounces of gold, which is on a parallel structure. We're on a separate structure, but we're in one of these orogenic camps. And it looks like we're in a higher level exposure of the same kind of system they have at Bralorne. So we're up in a brittle deformation regime where you have a stibnite signature often associated with the gold, whereas they're in a mid-level gold system where they have, it's more crack and seal, narrower, high-grade veins, but they don't get the stibnite signature. They still get the arsenic signature, but not the stibnite signature to the same degree that you do with the epizonal equivalent.
Right, so tell this is kind of interesting right now. So you kind of alternate between the RC and the diamond drill, depending on, well, that's what you did last year, and it seems to be that's the way you're intending to go this year. What historical data or what data sets that are out there? You kind of mentioned, Bralorne there and Gold Bridge. Is there anything that they're doing or have done that can inform the targeting of where your drills go in terms of your drill program, or is it you having to do it off the back of your own data? I'm always intrigued by how you can interpret historical information to your benefit and maybe be a little bit smarter and a little bit more astute with the allocation of capital.
Well, that's a good question, Matthew. But essentially, the project that we optioned from a gentleman that actually acquired the mineral claims, two industry professionals that acquired the mineral claims just in 2018, and we optioned it late 2019. But there was quite a history to the project prior to that. The first history of documented was small little adits that chased little stibnite veins on the main structure that we're on now, but also on a parallel structure, and within the camp district, some of which we've acquired recently in a new acquisition that we acquired. So there's a lot of little past production on these stibnite prospects, but they tended to be discontinuous types of veins, and it's because the stibnite that we see in this system seems to be a late phase of the mineralizing event that we're dealing with, which is primarily a breccia phase. And I think that portion of the breccia was overlooked by historic prospectors and explorers in the district. And and when these things weather on surface, they don't weather as there's no quartz vein. It's just an oxidized outcrop that's just a mucky zone on surface. That's why they were overlooked. And occasionally there was a little stibnite vein sometimes in there, and they would chase those little veins and they'd be discontinuous. But they should have been sampling the mucky rock that was around it. And that's why we started with RC drilling, because when we saw these exposures on surface, they were so oxidized, we say, look, if we try to diamond drill this, we're not going to get the recovery. So we started with a dry RC technique to test these shallow zones near surface. For instance, we channel sampled a road cut that was actually put in by a prospector that owned this property in 1985. He put this road in, exposed this road cut, but never sampled it because there was no quartz veins and stuff in it. We channel sampled these things and we took on the property, just did the systematic work. And two of those road cuts, one of them ran 31.5 meters of 5.88 grams per ton on a horizontal channel sample in an upper bank of a road cut. And the other one was around 23.5 meters of 4.8 grams per ton. So these are zones sitting there on surface, but just weren't recognized. So the problem with the project is it had never seen the systematic work. So when we stepped in, took on the project, we did the systematic good work that's done by professional explorers, which is soil sampling, geophysics. There was never a soil sample for gold on the property. There were problems soil sampling in this area because there were technical challenges, and that's because a volcano blew up about 2,400 years ago and dropped this ash all over the property. So it created a problem getting soil samples. So that was a challenge for us. So we looked into the literature, and based on the experience of myself and our Vice President of Exploration, Darren O'Brien, we looked into the history of what had been done to evaluate these kind of situations, and we discovered that there was some really good research done on the take-up of arsenic by Douglas fir trees, and our property is covered with these Douglas fir trees. And so we decided, okay, we'll do this biogeochem sample program, look for the arsenic anomaly, and then we'll go back into these areas where we see arsenic in the Douglas fir and test those zones and do the work required to dig the pits through this popcorn ash to get down or to do a soil sample survey. So that's the kind of systematic work we did. That's what identified the system now. It's got a 2-kilometer potential based on the geochemistry, both biogeochem and soil geochem. And we're just systematically doing that and following that zone along with opening up new trails to identify some of these targets and create drill setups, but also just the soil sampling that gave us the confidence to go in and put those trails in.
Right. I mean, see, that's interesting to me. And you talk about this sort of episodal orogenic structure to these things, but orogenic typically is, well, people tell it in a different way, but effectively kind of lower grade, but fairly homogeneous with these kind of high grade veins, which you're certainly your press releases and certainly some of the results coming from you're pointing to those for sure. So, but again, with the complications of a volcano blowing up, etc., it seems like an unconventional orogenic structure at surface. But are you seeing with some of the deeper drilling a more conventional ore body orogenic ore body or not?
Well, the Bralorne mine is a conventional ore body in terms of the orogenic classification system, right? So it would be similar to the Mother Lode in California and maybe the Engineer mine in northern British Columbia. So it's in a younger package of rocks that host these orogenic type gold systems.
Right.
But there's a much better chance of the higher levels of these younger orogenic gold systems being preserved when they're in a younger setting, like Western Canada. And one of the common associations of these epizonal gold systems is a stibnite association. For instance, one analyst that's following us, Mike Gray with Agentis, has put out a recent report where he makes some comparisons between the Fosterville project in Australia, which is a high-level epizonal type orogenic system that transitions into a coarser gold typical orogenic system, and the Reliance project, where we're still at the upper levels and we haven't transitioned yet into the deeper levels. So I'm kind of beating around the bush a bit, but effectively, it's not unusual for orogenic gold systems to have certain, especially the younger orogenic systems, to have brittle deformation portions preserved in them. And those brittle deformation portions are often what are considered the epizonal. So for instance, the gold mineralization that we've got in our system is actually in a fault breccia, a mineralized fault breccia, and sulfidization of the country rock, which is primarily mafic volcanic. That's all rehomogenized into a breccia where there's breccia fragments as well as the matrix are carrying gold, and so it creates really homogeneous wide widths.
Right.
And these cataclastites are fault breccias. So,
along with the oxidized shears and the quartz stibnite veins, etc. It must have been difficult to kind of wrap your head around initially. But when was the moment you kind of say, "Oh, now I got this, and now we know what to look for"?
Well, we recognized it as potential orogenic system the minute we looked at the property, and the reason for that is it's got a very strong iron carbonate alteration system on surface. So the mafic volcanics are typically purple or green, but in this area on the property, we've got wide zones of 100 to 300 meter wide zones of this mafic volcanic is so altered with carbonate that the iron minerals in the mafic volcanic have now turned to iron carbonate. So you get these wide orange colored oxidation features that form the envelope or the smoke to a very large system over two kilometers of trend. And hosted within that are these tighter zones of mineralization that are still quite wide themselves. Averaging right now, it averages about 9 point. All our intersections, for instance, up at the Eagle Zone, the average arithmetic intersection we've got it there is 71 holes. Is 9.6 meters widths, averaging about 5.17 grams per ton gold. So pretty good. All considering all those 71 drill intersections are all less than about 30 to 40 meters below surface.
Yeah, no, that's interesting. Now, so just in terms of the district, we've mentioned a couple of mines already, and we've also mentioned the fact that the history of the company is prospect or project generation. What's the intent here with this project, with your BC project? I mean, how far do you move this? How much more money do you need to raise to go and take it to that point? Or what does it need to look like before you would think of, letting someone else at this?
Well, we see this has got potential to, just like Bralorne, to host a multi-million ounce gold system. We're just seeing the top of it. Now we're trying to understand the limits of it. So our goal, we feel it's better for us and for our shareholders to create value by discovery at a low discovery cost per ounce. It's better for us to do that discovery ourselves rather than farming out or selling this project at this stage. So our goal is to take this to the point where it makes sense to step back and start doing a resource calculation and prove to the world that we've got a plus million ounce gold system here. We haven't reached that stage yet. We're unlikely to reach a resource stage till 2023 at the earliest.
Okay.
But our goal is to get to the edge of this system, make it bigger, and then we make the decision after that. Do we do this ourselves? Do we take it all the way to making it a mine ourselves? or do we look at all the strategic options? We'll do whatever makes sense for shareholders, because I'm a big shareholder, and two of the other directors are big shareholders. So we want to do what makes sense for us, just like everybody, all the rest of our shareholders.
Okay, so you've done the first bit of that. You made a discovery. That's good news. A lot of people go through their lives not doing that, and that's fine. So that's good. And when you say, when you want to discover it's kind of like, again, a Canadian phrase, the edge of the envelope, as it were. These things can go on, and different models have, create different outcomes and different results for those companies. Do you think you've kind of got the team to go and raise enough of the capital to be able to do that? Because you're going to put out a resource maybe you talked about 2023 for you think about putting a resource in place. What do you think that needs to look like these days? What size kind of gets the market interested? How far do you have to take that in terms of updates to resource numbers? Because it seems that the number seems to be getting bigger.
Well, I guess it's a moving target. I remember when I started in the business with Homestake, the mandate was, you got to find 1 million ounce system. And I remember us geologists at the time going, man, that's a hard, that's a hard target. But nowadays, the Homestakes, the Barracks, now the Barracks and the Newmonts, and they don't want something unless it's like a 5 million ounce system. So it's really, as far as we're concerned, as a junior mining company, I think if we can move to demonstrate that we've got a plus 1 million ounce gold system that's got lots of potential to grow at depth in an orogenic type setting, because once you're on these orogenic systems, they do continue at depth. That's and the only thing that limits them is the economics, typically, of mining them. So our goal is to move this and demonstrate right now that we've got something near surface with the drilling and exploration of a plus 1 million ounce gold system. And then we say, do we continue to build this at depth, or do we focus on the ounces that we can get into production now, and knowing that this system will grow as a big system as the mine, if there is a mine that's ever developed on it, if that mine moves forward.
Okay, so you're starting the RC stuff. You'll get back into diamond drilling, presumably at some point, to kind of try and work out what it is that you've got. What's the next 12 months look like for you? In terms of how, not just in terms of how you allocate the capital, but in terms of the kind of news flow that you want to be able to put out to market.
Well, we're drilling now. We've been diamond drilling, and we've got 5 holes completed now, and already drilled about 1,000 meters, and some of those results are in the lab, and we're waiting for those results.
Good.
So
okay.
We also went back, because this area where we're drilling, we only opened the roads up in October of last year. So we're back. We did some channel sampling on surface where the zones are exposed on surface, and we still have to wait for those results and report those results too. So that'll give us a third dimension of horizontal drill hole, so to speak.
Okay. When you say you've opened the road, so is it kind of, and I guess when you're talking about the Alaska project, you could talk about seasonality, but in BC, have you got kind of seasonality to your drilling here as well?
We do to some degree, but we can drive right onto the property year round. The road, the joint access to the property is there. So the ability is there to explore year round. It's just a snow removal issue at some times of the year. For instance, there was quite a bit of snow this past year, but the prior winter, there wasn't a lot of snow. So, but we are back drilling this year in April with our RC rig, well ahead of our neighbors and others in the camp, like the company that owns the Bralorne Pioneer Mine, Talisker. They were drilling year round in the area. So it is possible to drill year round in this area. It's just a snow removal issue at certain times. So.
Right. Okay. Robert, I appreciate your time today. And real nice introduction to the company. And I kind of like the history and where it's come from. But more importantly, you got yourself a discovery, which you need to kind of work up. And as you say, what that 1 million ounce plus, and people start looking, and you go beyond that, and it becomes really interesting. So appreciate your time today. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Matthew. All the best.